Hi, welcome back for another episode of the Angler Journey podcast. I am here today with Abby Miller, and we are going to get into some really awesome stories, and we're just going to learn about Abby's life, but then also her journey as from being a student on an angler, and then what she's been up to with entrepreneurship. So, first of all, Abby, thank you so much for being here. This is going to be so fun.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yay! Okay, so to get right into it, I just would love if you would introduce yourself a little bit.
Yep, so I come from a small town, Meade, Nebraska, just 30 minutes north of here. Grew up doing a variety of things like every other small town kid. Was involved in all the sports and all the activities, which I think was really important to where I'm at now. The best things I got out of that were cattle. We had a small hobby farm, and then I started photography in high school. So my favorite thing now is taking pictures of cattle and people, and especially when I can take pictures of cattle as well. I'm really passionate about the agriculture industry and especially the people that are a part of it.
I love it. I think in high school is when I just really discovered my love of ag, and
yes,
being around animals is so fun. So, what has gotten you here? Because you have a pretty interesting little business, and I would love for you to share just a little bit about what you do, because it's more than just a product or a business. So tell us about that.
So I'll start with the why first, kind of what I love to do. I've had a lot of experience in the events industry through like a flower project, and then through obviously being a photographer. What I learned throughout this whole thing was I really love people, and I love the moments that we get to share with each other. So I'm really passionate about improving events to create better memories that ultimately result in better lives. Our lives are really just the sum of all the experiences and memories we have. So if we can improve all the little ones, make all those just a little bit better, I think at the end of our lives, we're going to look back. Something I do a lot of leadership kind of coaching, and we always talk about, it's not about the titles that you got or the things that, the accomplishments that you had. It's how you felt the whole experience. So I'm trying to help improve that feeling a little bit. So the way I've decided and figured out how to do that is I have a mobile bar. Ooh. So sophomore year of high school or of college here. Now this whole idea has had many different paths, and maybe we'll get into that. But September of my sophomore year, I found a pickup to buy, named her Pat, and then brought her home, and I've been working to turn her into a mobile bar. So what that means is, so it's like a tap truck. So out of the front of the pickup is a photo booth, of course, being a photographer. So that's in like the front seat, and then you go to the back of the pickup where there's a box on the outside of the bed of the pickup. And inside the box hide the kegs, and then on the outside are taps, so you can get yourself your drink of choice. So I have a 1957 Chevy, and then I also have just recently expanded to another little Cushman. So it's like a three-wheel, kind of like a golf cart looking thing, but it will be the same concept, but could go inside little places. So I want to serve, I want to serve weddings, corporate events, rent out to breweries, but just elevate Nebraskan events, add something new to our event ecosystem, and what we can add. And
for sure,
it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so amazing, and I've been lucky enough to get to watch some of the journey that you've been on. I remember when you bought Pat, that was a pretty big deal, and it was a little scary. I remember in the moment there was a lot of, is it going to happen? Is it not? So it's so fun to have watched that, but just the idea of having a vehicle that solves so many problems, serves so many purposes, is just brilliant. I love it. So congrats to you for being able to actually, make this happen. It's been a long journey. So
yes, it has.
So how did you where did you find Pat? Because obviously there's a lot of old pickups that exist. There's a lot of junk out there in the market, but how did you find your pickup?
Yeah, so like I said, this whole idea really started with an old trailer that I had, and that idea wasn't quite working well, so I was trying to find inspiration of, okay, what's a horse trailer, what else could we do? And I somehow came across a cool old pickup. So the first one I had found I found it on an auction, and I was like, well, maybe if I call him, I'm gonna pull a student card, and maybe I'll get it. And then that didn't work, and I tried that a couple other times of finding pickup, and it just was not working. And I was doing it all myself because, maybe we'll get into it later, my parents did not think this was a good idea at all. They, they really, really were resisting that and just really hoping I would forget about it and move on and kind of give up a little bit. So really how I found Pat specifically was the night, it would have been a Monday night. I had a mentor at my house in Meade because she was from Meade, and I was telling her about this concept, and I didn't know exactly literally the vehicle to get to the concept. I knew a concept, and she said, this is so cool, and my parents happened to be in the living room. When we got done with the meeting, my dad came up to me, he's like, yeah, this would be kind of cool, and I'm just going crazy because, finally my dad thought it was cool, and he said, hey, so-and-so, one of your friends, I think they have an old pickup, you should ask them about it. So I'd asked them about it, and it wasn't for sale, but he said it was a 1956 Chevy, and he would be willing to help me put it together if I found one. I said, okay, cool. So the next night I was at home and I was searching on eBay, and when I search on eBay, I do two very simple things. I click in old pickup, and then and when you go on eBay, it has a vehicle finder. So I then clicked Chevy, and simply because C comes before F in Fords. That's why I was looking for a old Chevy pickup. And I was scrolling through and I happened to find a 57. And I just clicked and I was like, oh, my friend's was a 56. I'll just click on it. Why not? Because my only purpose was trying to figure out how much they cost. I had no idea. And I was scrolling through and I was like, oh, this one's, right now it's pretty reasonably priced. There's not a lot of rust. They say it runs. This is kind of cool. And it even had kind of part of the box that I wanted to build. I was like, oh, this is just really cool. So for just my enjoyment and what I thought would be funny was looking at where would this pickup be, because every one of these pickups was in Utah, Florida, Michigan, not Nebraska. Well, lo and behold, it was in Nebraska. I was like, wow. And then I thought I recognized the username of the people selling it, and it said Wahoo, and I was like, oh my, I live 7 miles from Wahoo. This is really crazy. So I figured out who owned the pickup, dialed their number, and called them and said, I introduced myself, said, hey, I've been looking for a pickup. You have the exact one I'm looking for. This is just so wild. Would you be interested in selling it off of eBay? My fear was, with these pickups, eBay, the auction just goes up so high. What if I'm in class? So I called him, and said, would you sell it to me outside? And he said, well, how much would you give me? I was like, well, you just tell me a number. I have no idea. And he told me the number, and I said, okay, let me call my dad. So I called my dad, and, he said, go for it, kid. And so then we bought the pickup. So the next morning I skipped chemistry and went and bought the pickup.
That's awesome. That's so crazy. And what an odd alignment of events there. It just all of a sudden there was your pickup, and there Pat was born. It
went from a concept of this would be maybe kind of a just simple concept to I now own a pickup that I'm starting a mobile bar with in 72 hours or less. It was kind of wild.
That's crazy. So what you mentioned that your parents were hesitant at first. Give us a little bit of details on the background of this concept, because I know it wasn't always maybe just a bar. But then also, what were their hesitancies, and what was the resistance that you faced with that?
I really think the root of all the hesitancy was, so I come from a lovingly large family. I have 4 siblings, 3 of which are married, all have kids, and my siblings are all creative, and there's one in particular who unfortunately just had a bad bet with entrepreneurship. It was, just a bad situation, maybe dived a little too deep, maybe a little too fast, and as a parent, seeing one kid kind of fail is really, really hard. And I don't think they wanted to see that happen ever again. So number one, entrepreneurship was just very scary. No, Abby, just go get a job. You're hireable. Go get a job. Number one. And then number 2, they didn't quite get the vision of it, because I think I couldn't say it. It was all in my head. And there were a few people on Angler's staff that I think were picking up on the right vision. I really couldn't say it. So when you come to them with an idea that you don't even have fully formed yet, of course it sounds like a bad idea. I'm in college. I shouldn't be investing money into something that's just might be an idea. So that was number 1. And then number 2, and this comes from, I'm reading Grit by Angela Duckworth right now, and it's about combining passion and perseverance. And she had a similar story of her parents didn't so she was really passionate about this project. And what she really found was, and this is the same thing with my parents, was they knew that whatever I was diving myself into would not love me as much as they loved me. So me diving into this was not as strong as their love, and that could fail me, but they knew they wouldn't fail me, so just like keep me safe. It's a safety thing. They knew if I didn't go for this, I would be safe. I'd still probably be successful enough.
Just fine,
You know, I would be just fine, exactly. So like, why put yourself on the risk? And they did not want to risk seeing me hurt, heartbroken. They would rather see me just smooth ride.
Wow.
And that was just really where it was, is they wanted to keep me safe, and that's a parent's job.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's crazy. I mean, and that's a great quote. I'm like, that almost took me back a second, because truly the people that you love, you don't want to see them hurt, but what are they going to give up to avoid the hurt? You know, there's always the risk, high risk, high reward. So what other types of resistance do you think you faced in the process of the last few years? Yeah.
There's three facets, really, I think we can break them down into, and it's myself. It's completely my own confidence in what I'm doing. Obviously, my parents' opinions, which we just went over, and then just strictly like the environment is always kind of, not always, I don't want to say in a pessimistic way working against you, but there are just simply things that happen that's nobody's really fault that will just happen. So for me personally, on that end of things, I know nothing about pickups. Like the day I bought one, I didn't know. I had no clue. Like I had to just ask people strictly, like, will this thing ever run again? I had no idea. I mean,
so you were completely new to the industry.
You no idea. Yeah. Like the closest thing I got to this was in high school in ag mechanics. We like put together a motor. Like I know nothing about cars at all. I just know how to run into things apparently. Like that's all I can do. So first like learning everything about like a car and a 57, like, and then what all these numbers mean. So there's that resistance of, can I really do this? Like, I don't know what I'm even getting into. And then also when you don't know what you're getting into, there were times where other people could sense that. So for example, before I found Pat, I had called somebody in Kansas City, and he had old pickups, and I was asking about him, and I was probably asking some questions that was like, hey, this girl has no idea.
Right.
And this could be just my own confidence too talking, but I don't think he was giving me the answers that maybe if I would have walked into that conversation with confidence that he gave me. So there were some times where I might have not got the best cards laid out because I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
For example, I had a welding job done. And now, again, I still don't know everything, so I don't know the truth on this at all. But the wonderful guys that are now working on my pickup think that I got completely kind of like ripped off, essentially, with the job that this guy did. And I just had no idea. And they said, well, clearly they knew you'd have an idea, so he charged you a little bit more. So there's been that environmental resistance, too, of, you know, and that's on where you can choose, you know, when those, my new body guys that are now working with me that were so mad at this other guy, I could have either been feeling of regret and said it was, oh, okay, lesson learned, move on. And that's what you have to do with your own feelings too. Like you're never going to completely believe in yourself the whole time, and you have to choose, okay, that's fine, you can think that, but we're still going to go.
Right.
And same thing with your parents. My parents did not believe in it, and that could have been a sign, or it could have just been two people that just don't believe in it, and those two people just happen to be my parents. So those are kind of three examples of resistance.
And I love your attitude, and I'm sure it hasn't been positive the whole time, but
Absolutely
I love that you've over this journey developed, you know, wait, this is just us learning, this is learning more, and learning's hard, it's not easy,
No.
and it's ugly. I'm sure it's not been pretty. So what do you think was, I guess, the biggest takeaway from this so far? What has your biggest lesson been?
Biggest lesson. Something that I didn't realize, it was a lesson that I've seen but never really experienced, was, so Dwight D. Eisenhower has this quote, and if you're unfamiliar who Dwight D. Eisenhower is, look him up. He led one of the biggest Army expeditions kind of like in our history on D-Day. So he said, plans are nothing, planning is everything, and that's exactly how this has gone. If you would have told sophomore year in September, Abby, that just bought her pickup, that it would be 2 years later and Pat is still not blue. She would have said, that's crazy. How would that have happened? And should I even get into this? So the plan was to have a pickup that would be done within about 4 months. Like, that was completely the plan. Clearly didn't happen, and that's okay. And that's just how this whole thing has gone too, like, of where even my business, even as Pat, actually really didn't even start as a mobile bar. It was that old concept, and I kind of switched it to be a bar right away. So I've had to change and pivot those plans the whole time, but every time it's still proven that the wait has been okay. Or because things didn't go quite as planned, it was still okay. But the plan was still important.
Right. And you had done the planning, all of your plans that you thought maybe in the future this is how it's going to look like. Doesn't look that way, but
no.
But you've had so much progress yet. Like, you've still grown, and and this business is now launching. So your first event is at the end of the month.
Yes, so I'm doing kind of a first event, but it's kind of like a practice with my cousin's graduating. So we're going to bring out both of my rigs to test them out, double check everything works.
So you get both of them at the same time?
Yes.
That's going to be amazing. How has your experience and side hustle as a photographer impacted how you are approaching this business?
Ooh, that's a good one. First, it has helped just because I already knew people in the industry. So having that network, and also the right network, too, of people that maybe were, like, when I needed the pick-me-up, I had other photographers to talk to because it was the creative mindset. Everyone could see the vision, I think, a little bit better than some other people I've talked to. So that's helped. Something that I've gotten practice with in photography that I'm re-practicing now, so I didn't become an expert by any means, but I've experienced the feeling before. Charging money for something that's not quite tangible. I'm not selling a product where I know exactly how much it costs me to make and how much I want to make off of it, like a box of cereal or a commodity. I'm selling a little bit of, like, my intellectual property a little bit and creating value, like, out of something that the value doesn't have a price tag that you can usually find. So photography, photographer prices can really, really range, and they don't even always match up necessarily with skill all the time. And it's just what you see your value as and what people are willing to pay. So it was really, really hard for me to raise prices as a photographer. I wanted to be able to offer it completely as cheap as possible, barely paying myself what I make at an hourly job. Because I was willing to do it, and it could happen. Like, you can't produce corn without putting X amount of inputs in. I can't just take pictures for free. I really could do that. So learning how to charge really what I'm worth and push that, and that's what I'm finding here too. That little lesson of learning to charge my worth there is I'm also now offering something that's not the cheapest thing out there. That's not the point of this. It's offering quality, but there's not a book that tells you what that number is.
There isn't a market that's exactly, well, this is what the average is. And you are adding so much value to, again, events in this area, and they're mobile, so they can go anywhere. You're not just a venue. But yeah, that's got to be difficult to look at yourself in the mirror and know that you've spent hours and hours, days, weeks, months. It's been over 2 years, and how much have your brain power has gone to developing this? A lot. Yeah. And it's been so cool. I am so excited. So if you could start all over again, what do you think you would have done differently? And this is kind of, I think, a question that'll help. There's a lot of people with really great ideas, and sometimes they do take time to really get going. What would you say to those entrepreneurs at the beginning of their journey in reflection on your own?
Right. That's a good question. So I'm a part of Build Camp here. So it's led by Brennan, and a book we just read was called All In Startup. It's a really great book. Recommend it to everyone. But one of the lessons that was mentioned there that I've also heard from other places was, find a way to cheaply get something to market as fast as possible to test it. I was really, really stubborn in that I wanted Pat I wanted Pat to be as quick as possible the vision I saw of her, which was not what she looked like now, although her rustic look is awesome. I wanted her, completely paint the new fresh paint. I wanted her to look like a new 57. So by doing that, and that's why it's taken 2 years of getting her look pristine. The other option could have been the very first, that September when I bought Pat, there was really nothing stopping me from trying to get an event booked in October and throwing the kegs together and just taking it to an event. Just even if it made me very little money, just to try it and get. And so Grant Staley, he's also an alumni of the program that he's been on this podcast too. He very early on told me, he said, get this out there as fast as possible. And it didn't make me mad, but I was like, I don't think so. So I don't know if it was right or wrong in the end, but if I would start this again, I would, or give advice to someone starting something like this was, if your product's not perfect, that's okay. Just try it out. And it could have maybe built up some capital for me to use later. So don't be so worried about getting something perfect to show the world. You don't have to let your perfect product be what the world sees, and that's okay.
Wow. That's really, really good. I love it. How did you decide to name her Pat? And also, why the color blue?
Right. Good question. Okay, so I'll start with the first one, the name. So a lot of people think Pat and Tap is just a palindrome, so it's like P-A-T-T-A-P. So it actually comes... I didn't even notice that. So that's why it rolls off the tongue so well, and people love it. So it's actually, full name would be Patsy, so that's named after my grandma Miller. So what's really fun for me through this whole thing is I've kind of have a cool tie with my grandparents through this whole thing. So my grandma Miller, when she died, so she had a whole bunch of flowers. So the day she died, no one was going to take her flowers. We were going to let them die. And I was like, no, grandma is going to come back from the grave and haunt all of us if you don't. So and that what got me into flowers, which actually ended up leading into what this is. And then a lot of the body work and more mechanical work. My grandpa, he started a business back home. He owned a gas station and then a body shop back home. So and that's where all the work on this is getting. So I have a really cool tie to my grandparents with this. And then I have actually kind of a third bonus grandma, and who's not actually my grandma, we should call her that. She was the whole reason I got to be a part of agriculture and that was my first experience with entrepreneurship, was agriculture. So the whole reason I'm able to do any of this is kind of from my grandparents and that heritage. So first one is named after my grandma Pat.
That's so cool. And then the color blue.
So the whole time I was really stuck on Pat being white. Okay. Really throughout, again, planning is everything, plans are nothing. I wanted a white pickup because it would match every event. What I then further decided was that white was kind of boring, honestly. So I switched to blue simply because as a photographer, I understand a little bit about colors, and literally it's just because the sky is blue. The sky is in every picture, so blue kind of, if there's any color that matches everything, it's blue. Turquoise is in, and it's personally my favorite color. So
pretty color. She is going to look so good. Oh my gosh, I am so excited to see her at events. I am beyond pumped. I'm I've been waiting for 2 years for this. So what would you say you are currently working through? I think you mentioned a little bit of it with pricing, but what is something that you are forcing yourself to learn right now? And maybe what has that, or what in that has helped you have little pieces of advice and pieces of nuggets? Do you have anything with what you're currently learning that you can offer for other entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Again, this is another build camp topic we go through almost every week, but it's something very personally where I struggle with is being, I'm a positive, positivity is in my Clifton strengths. So where that can be a vice is anytime I see an opportunity, I can think of all the ways it could work out. So every conversation I have with someone, anyone that comes, because now that Pat's getting out there, people are coming to me with ideas. So I have to learn to decide out of all the ideas, which ones are really valuable and not to get distracted. Pat can go do a million different things. It doesn't mean all the things she could do or is what she should do. A piece of advice I got from I competed in a new venture competition recently, and a piece of advice I got from one of the judges, because he could sense this on me. It's really easy to pick up if you know this at all. But his advice was write a description of your customers, like a job description of your customers. If your customers can't fit that job description, fire them. Not everyone that comes to you needs to have your services. So, so I'm finding that like there's going to be some events that simply like Pat is not perfectly equipped for. It's not what she's made for. Especially for Pat, like her big thing will be price. Like she's not made to do small parties really if you don't have a big budget.
Right.
That's just not what she's made for. So that's kind of why we brought in the Cushman. So being able to understand for me of really defining the most important customer I have or the most important industry I want to be in. Do I want to do full service bar or do I just want to be equipment rental? I probably shouldn't do it all at the beginning. Yeah. So deciding, which one should I focus on? Like that's a really important thing I'm working through right now is what to focus on.
That's really good. And that kind of helps you quiet out the noise so that you can, it's hard. There are some really cool ideas, especially when you're such a creative person. I can relate to that when there's so much that's so exciting, but being able to get a little bit of silence in your head to keep on track is real. It's hard, but it's very valuable when you find it.
Right.
Speaking of the new venture, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
So exciting. What do you think you did in pitching that that caught the judge's attention? You've pitched this idea before, before it was as developed as we are now. But what do you think you did that was, what helped you get to the top 4?
Yeah. And this comes from kind of the judges too. It was not that it was a story of how I started. It wasn't like a story. It was more of like I had a true connection with what I was doing and it fit my personality. There was one judge that kind of mentioned, he was like, you are clearly your brand. I look at you, you could talk, and you might not mention Pat, but then you clearly fit the brand of someone that owns a mobile bar business. And I think that's what helped judges buy into me was maybe I'm not the most lucrative. Like this is not a business that truly an investor would get really excited about. Right. It's what a photographer gets excited about, not an investor. But what bought them on was that I really, really was passionate and was excited about what I was doing. Yeah. I think that's really the key word there. I was excited about it. Whether or not they liked the idea, I was still going on my merry way.
Right.
So that was number one. And then number 2, although I was super excited and had a visionary idea, when it came to that competition, I really, really worked hard to get numbers and know my numbers on where it could scale and where it couldn't. And that's what got me I found out the second round was just because I had numbers. And they were really, really specific. I love math. So excitement, but then also pair that with some planning.
Yeah, and you had your solid content there. And that's, every time we have any pitching, the one thing people tell you is get numbers. Same with resumes. Get your numbers on there. But like, how are you showing up and how are you going to do this? Investors love.
Yes.
They love it. I'm just so thrilled that you got to do New Venture, but you got to win some money too. Okay. So how do you plan on investing that? And also, how has your brain worked with choosing where to invest money in? Because this hasn't been you didn't just start with $50,
right.
Like you did have to have some upfront costs. What is your thought process and how do you go about that?
Right. So that's a big one, and especially, so my whole pitch was that if I got $15,000, it would essentially invest in maybe the next Pat, which wouldn't be called Pat, but the next one. So when getting that investment, it's all about figuring out what will give me the best return on that investment. Like it wasn't just a little gift to now go on a shopping spree, right? So looking at, and really honestly what I'm doing right now is saving it. I'm not going to spend it until I know for sure what it could help for the business. I could just go buy a new car. There's a lot of things I could buy that would be good for the business. I'm really operating as if I didn't get that investment to start, because nothing should be it shouldn't depend on that $7,500 it's kind of like the saying of don't let one customer have more than 30% of your business.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. So, operating as if almost like I didn't win it and continuing to do what I do. But looking into, the first thing I will be doing is getting Pat a new motor so she's more road safe. But
Yay, and she can travel further.
Yeah.
Meet new people. Oh my gosh, I am excited to watch Pat's journey. And we're getting down to the last couple questions. What is your go-to? Like, if you could put something on a billboard, what would you put? And that might take you a second because there's a lot of things that could go there. But if you had to just give a piece of advice, what would that look like?
The first thing that came to mind, and it is just the word live. So I have this sign in my room at home, and it's like, life is failure, life is opportunity, life is, all these different things. But at the end it was like, so just live it. I'll attach maybe at the bottom or something when I find that quote. But, like, there is just so much more to, like, just like live and have fun, and it's through feeling and embrace the failure, embrace the good stuff, embrace the bad stuff. I really like, this is going to sound so cliche. I almost don't even want to say it, but like, live, laugh, love. There's a reason everyone loves that. Like, live a little and then laugh about it, but then love a lot. Yeah. And I think if we all just live, and living isn't perfect, just
do it.
Yeah, if I could do a word, just say live, period.
I love that so much. Life is all the things. And we don't get to choose what they are, but we can just keep living.
Yeah. I guess my second go-to motto, I don't think it would fit on the billboard, but okay. It works in with, maybe how to live a little bit, is I have a saying on my phone that I look at every day. It's on my wall screen, and it's, it's from Mother Teresa, but it's never stop doing the small things for others, because the small things are what usually occupy the biggest parts of their hearts. So it's living doesn't mean doing the extravagant. It's holding the door for people. Like, that's what's important. Yeah. Smiling at people really goes a long way.
Eye contact. So all the things. Wow. I love it. You and I love you so much. This is so awesome. What is your mission statement, your vision statement, or what did you say for your business? Like, we've talked about it briefly before, but I just loved it.
Yep. So Pat exists to make better events that lead to better memories that ultimately will result in better lives.
Yay. See, it is. You are it. This is your business, and it totally makes sense because you are coursing through every little bit of it, and I just love it. So thank you so much for sharing your heart. My final question is, what fuels the fire in your belly? So this past year, being a photographer, I don't know what type of opportunity to put on it, but there are two people that I have pictures on my camera roll that I see quite often through my camera that will never get to see this. And they range from the ages of 18 to 81. So it's just a reminder of, we have no idea how long we have on this earth. We don't know how many memories we get to share with the people next to us. So might as well make them all awesome. So that's kind of my pitch of why to have Pat. The events that we have matter. The moments that we share with people, they matter. So if I can be involved in that as much as possible, I just want to be a forever wedding crasher, essentially, because these moments matter. So. That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was amazing, and I just think that we're going to get to a lot from this episode, but it's just so fun to talk with you. So thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you for having me this afternoon.